Notes on factoring out the greatest common factor, or the GCF. We're getting set up for factoring to where when we come back from Christmas break, we will continue our factoring and move forward with it after this section. This kind of wraps up everything before our final exam. What I'm looking for in number 1, I'm looking at my number, so 15. 15, its factors, or writing it out as a prime factorization, in other words 3 times 5. There's nothing that goes into 3, nothing that goes into 5, but 3 times 5 is 15. 14 is 2 times 7. Notice that 2 is prime because the only thing that goes into 2 is 1 and 2. The only thing that goes into 7 is 1 and 7. So there's no numbers that are in common here. Now I look at the x's. Well, if I have x to the 3rd and x to the 7th, remember this is x times x times x. X to the 7th is x times x times x times x. 5, 6, 7 of them, right? Well, how many are in common? 1, 2, 3. So in other words, our greatest common factor is going to be x to the 3rd. Well, what's left? If I pulled out an x to the 3rd, so in other words, I'm looking at 15 x to the 3 and trying to use the exponent stuff that we talked about. Notice that I have x to the 3 over x to the 3. Remember, these would cancel out. I'd be left with 15. I've got the negative 14 x to the 7 over x3. Remember, there's 7 on the top, there's 3 on the bottom. When we divide, we subtract. This ends up being negative 14x to the 4. When you're looking, we will always take the smallest amount of x's, or of that particular letter, out of an expression to factor it. This would be my answer. Okay. Number 2. Notice that they're both negative, so obviously they have in common a negative. Both, let's see, 12 is 2 times 2 times 3. 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. What do they have in common? A pair of 2's, right? So a pair of 2's, 2 times 2 would be 4. What's the lowest amount of any variable? Y to the 4th. Y4. Well, negative 12 y4 over negative 4 y4. The y4's cancel. Negative 12 divided by negative 4 is 3. Negative 8 y5 over negative 4. Negative 8 divided by negative 4 would be 2, so plus 2. 5 minus 4 is 1, so I only have 1 y left. And that is basically factoring out the greatest common factor. I'm going to continue to work on some of these. That way you can see varieties of different types of problems, but ultimately at the end of the day, we're going to come back and they're all going to be about the same. So I'm looking at number 3. 17, there's nothing that multiplies 17 that will give me 14. In other words, the only factors of 17 are 1 and 17. But they do both have a negative, so I'm going to have a negative. What's the lowest amount of the variable? 3 is smaller than 8, so I'm going to use M3 out here. On the inside, this is going to become 17, because remember I divided out the negative, because negative 17 M8 over M3 negative. Negative divided by negative made it positive. 8 minus 3 is 5. Plus, because 14 M3 over negative M3. Negative over negative made positive. The M3's cancel. I'm left with 14. Number 4. What's in common? 21 is 3 times 7. 14, 2 times 7. I'm not going to pull a negative out this time because there's no minus sign or negative sign out in front. So, what's in common? A 7. Letter-wise, smallest one, 4, 5. I'm going to pull the 4, so V4. So when I do this, I'm going to take 21V4 over 7V4. These cancel. 21 divided by 7 is 3. What I want you to see is right here, when I found my pair, it tells me what's going to be left in the parentheses right there. Minus 2, because negative 14 over 7 is going to be a negative 2. We have V5 and V4. There's my negative 2. 5 minus 4 is a 1. So there I am. The only thing for most of some of these that are fairly long, they just add letters to the problems. But we're going to follow the same basic principles as what we've been doing. Negative 5, 17. There's no number that divides 5 that also divides 17, and likewise there's no number that divides 17 than 5. So there's no number going to be on the outside. Smallest amount of x's. 7, 2. Well, I'm going to have an x squared out here. y5, y6, I'm going to have a y5. Negative 5x7 y5 over x2 y5. This becomes negative 5 because negative 5 divided by 1 is negative 5. 7 minus 2 is 5. 5. Oh, these cancel. I'm left with just negative 5x to the 5th. Likewise, 17x squared y6. Now this is positive because it's a plus right there. Divide by x, 2y5. 17 divided by 1, 17. My 17 looks kind of gross there, so I'm going to fix that for us as soon as this eraser gets kind of caught up with us. x2 cancels out x2. 6 minus 5 is just a y. And then that one would be done too. Again, if you need to pause, by all means. If you need to replay, then replay. I'm going to kind of go out of order here, just because I just slide the screen over. I'm going to go ahead and do 6 and 8, and then I'll come back and finish off with 7, 9, and 10, because I won't need as much room. So, number 6, they're both not negative, but I can still factor out a negative because negative 1 is a factor of everything. So one of the rules that I've learned over the years as far as being a part of math, and when they're trying to teach you, is they're trying to get you to go ahead and divide out the negative if it leads the problem. So in other words, if this one's negative, that's almost more of an indicator than if you have two negatives. Notice that we didn't pull out a negative here because the first one's positive. Here the first one's negative, so that's kind of the signal that they're wanting you to pull out a negative of this problem, because on answer choices that's generally what they will do. So I'm going to pull out, well, what divides 4 and 24? Well, 4 is 2 times 2. 24 is 2 times 2 times 2 times 3, because 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 3 is 24. Prime factorization. There's two pairs of 2's, which makes it a 4. I'm pulling out a negative because, again, that's a negative 4. Smallest amount of x's. Well, they're the same, so obviously I'm pulling out x to the third. Smallest amount of y's. Well, this is a 4, that's a 2. I'm going to pull out 2. So negative 4x3 y4 over negative 4x3 y2. Remember, this is the common factor that we're saying is right here. Negative divided by negative, make it a positive. X3 over X3 cancels. 4 over 2. Well, 4 minus 2 is 2. So this becomes Y2. 24 X3 Y2 over negative 4 X3 Y2. Y2 over Y2, that cancels. X3 over X3, that cancels. 24 over negative 4, negative 6. And I'm done. Again, they just get longer. It's not anything that's going to be shockingly difficult. We're looking at 22. 2 times 11. We're looking at 12, which is 2 times 2 times 3. You're looking at 22 times 2 times 5. Remember, common factor means it's the same all the way through. That's why I'm making out a 2. So I have a 2. What's the lowest amount of V's? V5. So now I'm looking at this and dividing. Well, remember earlier we said, well, if you have your common factor, what's left over will be your numbers that go in there. So when I crossed out the 2, I was left with 11. So 2 times 11 would give me 22. I had V5. Well, the V5s would cancel out because remember, we're trying to simplify this down a little bit so that we can see that crosses out. 22 over 2 is 11, so we have plus. And you had 12V8 over 2V5. Well, 2 times 3 is 6. Well, 12 over 2 is 6. How many V's do we have? 8 minus 5 is 3. Well, this should be 10. Well, remember 20 V7 over... Sorry, the phone rang. It was my wife. I had to answer that. Sorry. So we had 20 V7 over our common factor of 2V5. Remember, 20 divided by 2. Hey, there's my 10. 7 minus 5, well, that's V squared. Okay. I'm not a big fan of the way this is written, but this would be our factored form. I think sometimes when you see answer choices, they will end up doing something like 6V3 plus 10V squared plus 11. Just know that we're descending order of powers. You know, I'm not going to fight the difference on that. You just have to make sure that you can match it up on a multiple choice type situation. All right, number 9. Again, 15, 11. The first one's not negative, so I'm not going to worry about factoring out the negative on this one. I only wanted to show it to you on the other one over there. So there's nothing in common with 15 and 11 because this is 3 times 5 and then 1 times 11. There's nothing in common. There's nothing in common per se with y squared because this doesn't have any y's. So this one is 15 minus 11y squared. Obviously this is your favorite because there wasn't anything to do. These are fewer than we are going to see, but I did want to show you in case it does creep up that sometimes, sometimes they have ones that are already factored, so that way you have that. Again, it's negative, so I'm going to pull out a negative. They both have a 4, so it's obvious it's a 4. The smallest amount of y's is y6. Yeah, I didn't move it over. I thought I could take care of it. Thought it would fit in there. So let me erase this. Okay. So negative 4y7 over negative 4y6. Negative over a negative make positive. 7 minus 6y. 4y6 over negative 4y6. Positive divided by negative is a negative. 4 divided by 4 is 1. That's going to be the one that gets people in trouble. Is this 4 divided by 4? They want to say it cancels out at 0. Pay attention to 4 divided by 4 is 1. And that's basically our notes. Thanks.